I will show you now how you can use text network analysis and infranodus to enhance and augment your research process. I will use an example of a text that I wrote about the performance of my friend, and I'm going to try to generate some new ideas about this text, or maybe some new ideas for a new research that I'm going to make. So first of all, I need to log in infranodus, and once I have done that, I will see the apps screen. So click on add a new text button here, and then I can import a file. So here's a button to import a file, and that's going to be the text from my iPhone that I wrote. I'm going to rename the graph, save it ns-dos as the name of the artist, click save, and then it's going to be visualized. And the way it works is that all the words in this document are the nodes in the graph, and the co-occurrences are the connections between them. Like this, I can quickly see the patterns that my narrative generates, how the different terms are related, how they're separated, and so on. So here I can see that I write a lot about chaotic natural movement on one side. Then here we have something about music, playing music, and the relationship between chaos, music, and dancers, how it affects dancers. If I click on the essence pane here, I can see what the text is about. And if I click on the specific terms, so for example here, natural chaos process, I can see which context these terms were used in. So this already gives me a very nice overview of the text that I wrote if I need to come back to it and to develop it further. Now, another interesting feature, if I click on the graph here, deselect all the nodes, is that infranodus can already give me an insight about the kind of direction I could take to develop this text further. So if I click on the insight pane here, it says to me that, okay, my discourse structure is diversified, it has balanced representation of several perspectives, but I could develop it further if I identify the structural gap between the less represented topics below and develop the themes that they represent. So here it gives me an example. What is the relation between call, space, noise? So something about noise and space, and chaotic pattern state. So I can see what was I writing about noise, for example, in this text. See the parts of the text where it was mentioned. So here it's something about pink noise, the phenomena, where the noise with chaotic properties is something that represents life, and random white noise is just a random entropy. All right, so I have this idea on one side, and then on the other side I have chaotic pattern state. So for example, what I could do is to see also in which context I use chaotic pattern state. Chaotic pattern state. Okay, so it's about the body movements and how body naturally moves in chaotic patterns. Okay, so there is some interesting idea about the phenomena of pink noise and chaotic patterns of movements and what kind of different emotional states they represent. So what I can do now is to go and write something new. I click on the interpret field here, and I can write there is an interesting connection between the fractal chaos pink noise and chaotic movement patterns. Save it into the graph, and you see when I use the interpret feature, it just draws on top of the existing discourse. So it's a way for me to annotate and to show what are the different ways how I could develop this text further. So for example, here there's also affect that I didn't mention, how the audience might be affected by chaotic pattern, movement, and chaos and pink noise. Let's say I want to develop this even further. So in order to do this, I can click on some words that I find interesting here. So for example, chaotic, pattern, movement, noise, And then when I go to add search results button here, chaotic pattern, movement, noise, I can add affect here just to see what exists out there that mentions all these words. This feature works in a way that it imports Google search results for all these key terms and then shows them to me as a graph so I can see what exists out there and how it compares to what I've been writing about before. Right, so here we have Google search results. We can deselect all the nodes and we see that, okay, so there is quite a lot of stuff about movement, noise, pattern, chaos. What could be interesting is to see, for instance, what about move, chaos, fractal. Let's see what Google search results are there. Okay, so it's about fractal market hypothesis. So this is some research about the business cycles and how business cycles go through these fractal patterns. So what I can do is go to the result page. Here I open my new graph and I can add something about the markets here, some new idea. So for example, it can be interesting to study markets and the fractal nature of movements. Okay, so I add this, then I can go back to that original page and select something else. So for instance, okay, what about pink fractal movement noise? Let's see what we have there. All right, so here we have an interesting research on human movement variability nonlinear study, chaotic heart rhythms. So here is an interesting research. We can even open it to see what it's about. Okay, so we see here that evidence supports the presence of an optimal state of variability for healthy and functional movement. I guess they mean physical movement, and that this movement is characterized by chaotic structure. Deviations from this might lead to some pathology. So here is an interesting thing. I can add something to this original graph. Into the interpretation I was doing. So here I add a new idea. Okay, great. And I can go back to my graph and now I can already start generating ideas. You see, here I'm talking a lot about movement variability, optimal states, and fractal patterns. So this already can give me a nice beginning for my further research. Maybe I'm going to write something about the specific effects on cognitive and emotional states that chaotic movement has and how sound and movement can have an effect, and then link it to the performance of my friend and somehow further develop that text from which it all started. So here is an example of the workflow of how Infranodus and text network analysis can be used to generate new ideas.